Emma stood in front of the mirror, fixing the collar of her dress for the third time. Her hands trembled just a little. "Dad, are you sure you're okay with this?" Daniel brushed the dust off his old suit jacket, and gave her a warm smile. "As long as you're happy, I'm fine." Emma glanced at his hands. The rough, calloused fingers, shaped by 30 years of handyman and maintenance work. Pipes, wiring, broken walls, emergency repairs. His hands had survived every kind of job a home or building could throw at him, and those same hands had carried her future. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "What are Ethan's family like really?" Daniel heard her quiet question and answered gently, "People are people, Emma. Rich or poor doesn't matter. What matters is the heart." Outside the door, Ethan waited in his crisp suit. "Emma, Mr. Daniel, good to see you." As they drove through a wealthy neighborhood, Emma held her father's hand, rough, warm, familiar. "It'll be okay," she whispered to herself, but her breath grew heavier the closer they got to the mansion. The moment they stepped into Ethan's family living room, Olivia, Ethan's sister, rose from the sofa. Her designer dress shimmered under the chandelier, but her expression was cold enough to dim all the lights in the room. She offered her hand to Daniel, but when her eyes dropped to his rough, calloused fingers, hands shaped by 30 years of handyman and maintenance work, her brows tightened almost invisibly. "Your hands look like someone who fixes pipes and broken walls." Emma froze. Ethan's face turned pale. "Olivia, stop." "What?" "I'm telling the truth," she replied casually. "These days, most men take care of their hands. It's a new era." Daniel gave a small, patient smile. 30 years of repair work. "That's all." Grace, Ethan's mother, stepped forward with a smooth, elegant tone that somehow felt sharper than her daughter's words. "Oh, you still do manual repair labor? I didn't know people worked like that anymore." Ethan's hands are very soft. He learned piano and art when he was young. Emma's fist tightened on her lap. They had no idea how many nights Daniel worked without sleep, just so she could graduate. "My father is a skilled craftsman," Emma said, her voice trembling. "People respect him." Olivia tilted her head. "Really? These days machines do these things. Hand labor feels outdated." Emma gritted her teeth, but Olivia wasn't done. "So, where do you live?" Emma answered quietly. "In a small apartment district." Olivia's lips curled. "A small apartment? Ethan lives in the best part of the city." Ethan whispered urgently. "Olivia, that's enough. I'm being realistic," Olivia insisted. "Marriage needs matching families. Love alone doesn't make it work." Emma stood abruptly. "So you're saying we're not good enough because we're not wealthy?" Grace raised her hands quickly. "No, dear, that's not what I meant. Just that adapting might be difficult. Lifestyle, education level, these things matter," Olivia added. Emma's eyes flashed. "I graduated from college," Olivia calmly asked. "Which college?" "Ethan went to a top school." Daniel rose slowly, shoulders slightly bowed. "I'm sorry. I should have raised my daughter better." Emma gasped. "Dad, no. You did nothing wrong." Her voice cracked. Her hands trembled. Her heart split open. When Emma tugged gently on her father's arm, guiding him toward the door, a sharp scrape echoed behind them. A chair pushed back hard across the marble floor. Richard, who had remained silent through every insult and every gasp, rose abruptly to his feet. His voice thundered across the room. "Stop! What do you think you're doing? You're telling him to leave." "Him?" Grace flinched. Olivia froze. Ethan's breath hitched in his throat. "Richard, what are you?" Grace began. Not another word. Richard's voice shook. Not with anger, but with something deeper. Something old. He stepped toward Daniel slowly, studying the older man's face the way someone studies a forgotten photograph. His eyes traced the worn lines, the steady posture, and then finally, they landed on the hands. The rough, calloused hands shaped by 30 years of handyman and maintenance work. Hands that looked painfully familiar. Richard whispered, barely breathing. Do you remember the storm? The one from 20 years ago, when the hillside collapsed, and the house started breaking apart? Emma blinked, confused. Ethan stood completely still. Olivia's eyes trembled, as if some long-buried memory was clawing its way back. Richard's voice cracked. You're the man who ran back into that collapsing staircase. The man who carried both my children out in the dark. My daughter in one arm, my son in the other. Daniel's eyes widened slowly. You were the family on the hill, he murmured. Richard nodded, swallowing hard. You saved us, sir. Chest deep in mud, with electrical wires sparking around you. You still went back for my children. Olivia staggered backward until she fell onto the couch. Grace covered her mouth as tears escaped her eyes. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. Richard stepped closer, and then, to everyone's shock, he dropped to his knees before Daniel. Forgive us. We didn't just insult a hardworking man. We insulted the man who gave my children their lives. Silence fell over the room, but it was no longer cold. It pulsed with the weight of a truth that could no longer be buried. Emma looked at her father, understanding finally dawning in her eyes. And for the first time since arriving at the mansion, Daniel lifted his head fully. No hesitation, no shame, only quiet dignity. Ethan rushed toward Emma as Daniel stood silently beside her. His voice trembled as badly as his hands. Emma, please. You saw what happened. We were wrong. My family. They didn't know who your father was. Emma did not look at him. Instead, she kept her hand wrapped around Daniel's arm. Steady, protective. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but sharp enough to still the entire room. Even if they didn't know, they still chose disrespect. Ethan swallowed hard. But things are different now. You heard my dad. We owe your father everything. Emma's eyes lifted, a quiet pain resting in them. Respect shouldn't depend on what someone did years ago. It should depend on who they are today. Behind Ethan, Olivia covered her face. Grace wiped her eyes. Richard stood frozen in regret. Ethan stepped closer slowly, carefully. Emma, I love you. I can change. Please don't walk away. Daniel shifted slightly. A small movement, but enough to remind everyone he had been the one hurt the most. Emma spoke again, voice steady. My father spent 30 years fixing other people's broken homes. But today, he was treated like he was less than human. Ethan's breath hitched. That's not what I wanted. I should have protected you. Both of you. Emma shook her head. You're a good man, Ethan. But love without courage isn't love. Ethan's knees buckled, and he slowly lowered himself until he was kneeling at her feet. Emma, tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, not to think, but to steady her heart. When she opened them, her decision was already carved into her expression. There's nothing left to fix. Not this time. She turned toward Daniel. Dad, let's go. Together they walked toward the front door, unhurried, unwavering. Behind them, Ethan cried out, Emma, please don't leave. But she didn't look back. Not once. For dignity has no need to turn around. Evening settled gently over the small apartment complex. Daniel and Emma walked side by side, neither speaking at first. Only the soft sound of their footsteps filled the narrow walkway. When they reached the corner near their building, Daniel finally exhaled. Emma, I'm sorry you had to go through all that. Emma stopped walking. She turned toward him, eyes calm but firm. No, Dad, I'm sorry you had to. Daniel lowered his gaze, staring at his own hands. The same hands shaped by 30 years of handyman and maintenance work. Hands that repaired flooding pipes, broken wiring, collapsed walls. Hands that had carried strangers out of danger, and had carried his daughter's entire future without complaint. Emma stepped closer. You've spent your whole life helping people. You never bragged. You never asked for anything. And today they treated you like you didn't matter. Daniel swallowed, emotions tightening his chest. People see old hands and assume they know the story behind them. Emma shook her head gently. They don't know anything, Dad. But I do. She reached out and held his hand warm, worn, familiar. You didn't lose today. They did. Daniel blinked, surprised. Lose? Emma smiled softly. They lost the chance to know the best man I've ever met. The evening breeze swept through the quiet street. For the first time that day, Daniel's shoulders relaxed. He whispered, I just wanted you to be accepted, to have a better life than I did. Emma squeezed his hand. My life is better because I have you. A soft laugh escaped Daniel, half relief, half gratitude. As they climbed the stairway to their apartment, the world felt smaller, simpler, and strangely more honest. At the door, Emma turned to him one more time. Dad, you didn't deserve a single thing they said in that house. Daniel nodded slowly. And you didn't deserve what you heard either. They stepped inside together, leaving behind wealth, pride, and humiliation, carrying only dignity, and a bond no insult could break. That night, the mansion felt colder than usual. The chandelier flickered softly above the empty living room, as if the house itself remembered the shame that had filled its walls. Richard paced back and forth, his footsteps slow, heavy. Grace approached him cautiously. Richard, what are you thinking? He rubbed his forehead, a sigh escaping from somewhere deep. I wronged a man who did nothing but help others, and my children followed my arrogance. Olivia stood near the staircase, arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Dad, do you think Emma will ever forgive us? Richard shook his head. This isn't about her forgiveness. This is about dignity. Daniel walked out of this house with more dignity than any of us have shown in years ago. Grace lowered her gaze. So what do we do now? Richard exhaled slowly, as though releasing 20 years of regret. We start by apologizing properly. Not for Emma, not for Ethan, for him. Silence followed until Ethan entered the room, his eyes red, hands trembling from hours of crying. Dad, I need to find Emma. I need to explain. Richard placed a hand on his shoulder. Ethan, explanations don't heal wounds. Change does. Ethan swallowed hard, unable to lift his eyes. Richard took his coat from the hanger. Tomorrow morning, we go see Daniel. All of us. No one argued. No one spoke. Outside, wind rustled the branches, a faint echo of the storm from decades ago, the storm that had once destroyed their home, and brought Daniel into their lives. Tonight, that same echo felt like a reminder of the debt they could no longer ignore. Morning light settled gently over the small apartment complex where Daniel lived. He stepped outside, ready to leave for an early maintenance job, tool bag in hand, shoulders steady as always. But the moment he opened the door, he froze. Standing in front of him were Richard, Grace, Olivia, and Ethan, each of them looking as if they had barely slept. Ethan clutched a bouquet of flowers, his hands trembling. Daniel blinked slowly. Why are all of you here? Richard bowed deeply, so deeply that his voice shook on the way down. Sir, we wronged you. There is no excuse. I failed to recognize who you are, and what you did for my family years ago. Grace bowed next, her voice soft. We're truly sorry, Mr. Daniel. Olivia's eyes were already wet, makeup smudged from crying. I behaved terribly, she whispered. I spoke without knowing your life or your worth. Daniel lowered his eyes, uncomfortable with the attention. Ethan stepped forward. Daniel, I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need to say this. He held out the flowers with shaking arms. You raised Emma to know what dignity is. She walked away from a house full of money, to stand beside you. Daniel looked at Ethan for a long moment. Richard spoke again, quieter this time. We can't fix yesterday, but if you allow us, we want to begin fixing tomorrow. Daniel finally lifted his chin. You don't owe me anything. Richard shook his head firmly. No, we owe you everything. Silence settled between them, not heavy, but honest. Daniel let out a small breath. Wait here. He stepped back inside. A moment later, Emma appeared beside him. Hair loose, eyes swollen from a long night. The family straightened instantly. Emma looked at them, then at her father. Daniel nodded softly, and Emma stepped out into the sunlight, not with anger, not with forgiveness, but with clarity. Emma sat alone in a quiet corner of a small cafe, both hands wrapped around a warm cup. Steam drifted upward, soft and pale, the only thing moving in a morning that felt completely still. She had not slept. The door opened with a soft chime. Ethan stood there, hesitant, afraid, carrying hope that already seemed broken. He approached her table slowly. Emma, may I sit? She nodded once. He sat across from her, fingers trembling as they touched the edge of the table. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, I know you're not coming back, Ethan whispered. I know I lost you, but please hear me. Emma breathed quietly, waiting. You didn't walk away from me, he said, voice shaking. You walked away from the pain I allowed my family to cause you. Emma lowered her gaze. Her breath shivered. Ethan continued. I loved you, Emma, but I didn't stand up for you. And love without courage isn't love. Emma's eyes softened, but she didn't reach for his hands. You're a good man, Ethan, she said softly. Someone kind will meet you someday, someone who fits your world. But I can't return to a place where my father had to bow his head. Ethan swallowed hard. Is this the end? Emma nodded, slow but steady. It's the right end. Tears slid down Ethan's cheeks. Quiet, unforced, almost dignified in their honesty. Emma stood, placing a hand lightly on the back of her chair. Goodbye, Ethan. She walked toward the door. Morning light spilled in, wrapping her like a quiet promise. She stepped outside, free, steady, unbroken. Daniel returned home that evening to find Emma standing at the stove, quietly stirring a small pot of soup. The kitchen smelled warm. Onions, broth, something comforting. She turned when she heard the door. Dad, how did it go? Daniel set his work bag down and took a slow seat at the small table. The room was still like it was waiting. They came, he said softly. All of them, early this morning. Emma's spoon paused. And Daniel looked at his hands. The same rough, calloused hands shaped by 30 years of handyman and maintenance work. Hands that had repaired broken walls, restored lights in the dark, and carried strangers out of danger. Richard apologized first, Daniel said. He bowed deeply. I didn't expect that. Emma moved closer. Dad, how do you feel about it? Daniel exhaled slowly. For a moment he searched for the right words. I feel free. Emma blinked. Free? Daniel nodded gently. For years, I thought dignity was something people could take away, but today I realized it only disappears when I let go of it. Emma sat beside him, placing her hand over his. Dad, I'm proud of you. Daniel squeezed her fingers, warm and steady. And I'm proud of you, Emma. You walked away from wealth, from comfort to protect what matters most. Emma lowered her gaze, her breath softening. I just didn't want anyone treating you like less than who you are. Daniel smiled quiet, grateful. Then you understand life better than most. They stayed like that for a moment, the warmth of the kitchen wrapping around them, more comforting than any mansion's dining hall. Outside, evening lights flickered on across the neighborhood. Inside, father and daughter shared a silence that felt whole, a silence built not from what they had lost, but from what they had chosen to protect. Ethan moved out of the mansion and rented a small apartment near downtown. He began volunteering at a community repair center, fixing heaters, patching drywall, learning the work Daniel had done for 30 years, not to prove anything, but to grow into someone Emma would have respected. Richard made monthly donations to emergency rescue teams. In honor of the man who had once carried his children through a collapsing staircase, Grace joined him. Olivia followed soon after. The whole family changed slowly, but sincerely. As for Emma and Daniel, their life didn't suddenly become rich, but it became honest and peaceful in a way money had never given them. One cool morning, Emma and Daniel walked side by side toward the bus stop. They didn't rush. Their pace felt natural, steady. Emma glanced at her father. "Dad, if you could go back, would you change anything?" Daniel thought for a moment. He looked at the road ahead, quiet, sunlit, ordinary. Then he smiled. "No, because everything that happened led me back to you." Emma's eyes softened. She slipped her arm around his, gently leaning on his shoulder. "Then this is enough," she whispered. Daniel nodded, and for the first time in many years, it truly was enough. Not because life had become easier, but because dignity had returned home. They waited at the bus stop, morning sunlight warming their faces, a new day unfolding quietly around them. No mansion, no wealth, no apology could compare to this. A simple moment between a father and daughter who chose each other. Thank you for staying with us until the end. We will be back soon with a better story. Your support, your likes and your follow means so much to us.